Qing's Prose homecoming. One cold morning, my mother suddenly came to Shanghai. The person who accompanied her into my room was my cousin-in-law. Then the coachman brought in many large and small net basket packages. To my surprise, I couldn't help but rub my eyes and said, "Hey, mother." She was laughing. No, she was crying. The person at the time answered for her. "Auntie is thinking about you very much, so she decided to come to Shanghai with me. I was in such a hurry that I didn't have time to inform you. Sister, how are you and the children?" Only then did I think of Ling Ling and Yuan, who had never seen Grandma before. They quickly approached the bed and shouted, "Get up quickly, Grandma is here." Ling Ling glanced at her mother with a smile, but said nothing. Then she asked me again, "Mom, does she want Grandma?" I said, "Yes." Then she shouted softly, "Grandma." The mother could no longer care about the person around her. She quickly came over and held her face in her hands to look at her face. At the same time, she asked, "Where is my Yuan?" Yuan's head was hidden under the quilt. It was originally slightly lifted. He was peeping from the corner of the quilt. As soon as his mother said this, he quickly got into bed and refused to put his head out even if she called him. Mother did not force herself and just curled up against him under the quilt. He arched his body and said, "Yuan, don't be shy. Grandma has brought you a lot of food from the countryside." After saying that, I saw the corner of the quilt lifted up again. Yuan's dark eyes were rolling, and my mother couldn't help but smile when she looked at it. Laughter filled this small room. When the man said goodbye and left, we did not retain him. So my mother was busy unpacking and took out peach cakes, mince cakes, soy sauce, melon seeds, etc. The children were clamoring to eat them. I asked the maid to dress them, but my mother said, "Let's start singing and get under the quilt first." The same goes for eating some cakes. I couldn't help but think that they hadn't rinsed their mouths yet, but my mother had already torn the mince cake apart and distributed it to them, and they hurriedly put it into their mouths. What more could I say? The mince cake was made of polished rice, embedded with walnut meat, and was sweet and soft. Ling Ling stuck it to the quilt and couldn't pull it off, so she had to bite it with her teeth, while Yuan stuffed the whole piece into her mouth. However, he was not greedy enough, so he still rushed to lick Ling Ling's cake stuck on the quilt, and the two started to quarrel. The mother quickly called to them, "Don't make trouble, Ling Ling, Yuan. Grandma has some good things." As she said this, she took out a small bowl from the bottom of the basket. The mouth of the bowl was covered with thick paper, and the mother took it off. "Go," put his hand in and felt for a long time, and then he said happily, "Okay." Not even one of the eggs was broken. After saying that, he took out two bright and cute little ones for me to look at. Yuan shouted that he wanted to look at them too. The mother said, "These eggs are raw and must be boiled before they are delicious." Sister Yuan and sister, get up quickly and ask your mother to burn a few for you. I thought to myself that eggs are very common things. My mother put them in a bowl, arranged the crumbs, and brought them all the way to Shanghai. Wasn't she afraid of the trouble? But my mother refused to think so. She said that she bought 4 chicks this year, but after they were raised, only 2 were left, both of which were female. She wanted to bring them to Shanghai for us to eat this time, but they really can't give birth. Egg, 1 every day. Never lazy. I lifted these eggs one by one, and now there are hundreds of them. It's so interesting. As she said this, she took out the eggs in the bowl one after another and put them on the table. She was afraid that she would roll them down and break them. Please tell me to fetch an empty basin. They were all small, oval-shaped things, and the eggshells were very clean. Only one was smeared with blood. According to my mother, it was the firstborn egg of a black hen. It was very nutritious to eat. She repeatedly told me to cook it for the boy Yuan. Eat. She praised the 2 chickens again. One was black, with shiny black feathers, even its paws. The other one was a mixture of yellow, white and black, so she called it Flower Vest, which meant that it looked like it was wearing a floral vest. She cherished them very much, so she was reluctant to bring them to us to eat, and kept them in the home of her 6th married sister next door. I told her that she would have to go back within a month at most, so I gave her a month's supply of chaff and rice. I said, "Mom, you are just a person in the countryside. You should live here permanently." You can also take care of Ling Mai and Yuan for me." The mother seemed to be very happy and said to the children who were getting out of bed, "That's good. Grandma will no longer raise black hens and flower vests, and will help your mother take care of Ling Ling and Yuan." The girl came with 3 bowls of egg paste. The mother, who ate long belts, just smiled and watched Yuan who drank it eagerly. On the first day, everyone had endless things to say. The next day, I suggested that my mother go out to watch a Shaoxing opera, and then go to Gong Forest to eat vegetarian food after the opera. My mother didn't object much and just said, "I'm afraid the money is too expensive." I said that it was rare for my mother to come here and I should go and have fun. My mother said that I would take the children with me, so I had to obey her. In the theater, Yuan clamored to buy some food, but I refused. My mother always said that the children would not be bad if they could eat some candies. Later, we drank tea and peed when we drank too much. This way we came out before the play was over, because my mother said we would wait until everyone else had squeezed out after the play was over. I'm afraid the child will be lost. The vegetarian meal at Gongdalan was also a mess. First, Yuan knocked on the table with his chopsticks. "Come on, food." After eating a few chopsticks, he shouted not to eat anymore, jumped off his seat and ran around. My mother complained to me that I had ordered too many dishes and these people couldn't eat them all. She wanted to ask them to borrow a paper bag to wrap up snacks and take them home to eat. I advised my mother to forget it. My mother just felt sorry. After all, there was no good way. So she advised me to eat more, which made my stomach feel uncomfortable. She herself seemed to be trying her best to swallow it. On the 3rd day, Ling Ling fell ill. The doctor said she had a cold and was accumulating food, but her mother said she didn't eat as much as Yuan. Yuan was fine, so would she be accumulating food? There were probably too many cars on the road, and the horns were blaring, which frightened the little girl. After Ling Ling recovered, Yuan fell ill again, with constipation and stomachache, and her mother was speechless. She is busy taking care of things like this for me, so she always tells me what she wants her to do, and asks me to give her instructions. I said, "Mom, why should you be polite to the servant we paid for?" My mother was silent for a while and said, "That's not what I said. It's difficult to find a servant in Shanghai. If she gets angry and leaves, your things are so busy and I can't help you. So what's the point?" Gradually, my mother's appetite also decreased. She no longer likes to drink strong and bitter tea. I don't smoke often. I just sit quietly on the sofa. At first I thought she was bored, so I forced her to go out with her, sometimes to the park, sometimes to watch Chinese movies. Mother always takes her children with her every time she goes out, but now she doesn't buy much for them. She only picks up toys and gives them to them. They are also very happy, but some things are broken before they can be brought home. Look! Mother, she didn't look very distressed when she saw it. She said that the things were originally for children to play with, so if they were broken, it would not count. After all, children are not as addicted as adults. If you buy toys, you won't break them. There are so many toys on the street. What's the shop for? Later, I suggested not to take the children out, because it was important for them to study, and they would often take time off, and they might have to repeat the grade. Mother had nothing to say, but from then on, she had no intention of watching or eating outside. She was only worried about whether the little children would fall down, and she was afraid that they would use electric stoves. The reason for every fire reported in the newspaper was not for the sake of electricity leakage, right? One lonely night, my mother finally spoke to me. At first, I suddenly woke up from my dream. I seemed to hear the sound of my mother coughing in the next bed. I leaned over slightly and looked outside. Wasn't it that she was sitting on the bed smoking, coughing and choking frequently? I asked, "Mom, do you want some flowers?" She said that's fine, but asked me to get dressed and pour it for her. I put on my cheongsam and slippers as ordered, and when I wanted to turn on the light, my mother waved her hand and said no. She was afraid that the strong sunlight would wake up the children. There was a silver-gray moonlight outside the window, and I saw that my mother's face was terrifyingly solemn. I stood in front of her bed, bent down and handed the teapot to her. She took it and drank a few sips, then waved her hand for me to sit down on the edge of the bed. After a long while, she said to me decisively, "Ah King, I'm going to take a few sips. Went home. I asked in surprise, "What's the matter, Mother? Are you not used to living in Shanghai?" She said, "No, I can't throw away my own affairs in the countryside. What else do you have to worry about in the country? The period of high taxation is far away now. Those two chickens," my mother said sadly, "I miss them every day. And the chaff and rice left for Aunt Six are about to run out. Then what's the big deal? Write a letter and ask Aunt Six to buy some for her. And you can return them to her in the future. Otherwise, you can just give these 2 hens to Aunt Six. They lay an egg every day and are never lazy. What's so special about eggs? There are plenty of them in Shanghai." I couldn't help but laugh. The mother was very unhappy and said, "Lin seems to think everything is normal. That's because you are not sensible. You will be in trouble when you can't earn bronze sleeves in the future." I smiled proudly and said, "Mom, when I got divorced, didn't I even have any money? How could I be so good now? As long as a person has a skill, he will never have to worry about having nothing to eat." My mother interrupted me and said, "I hope you can always be like this." "Oh, Qing, do you know why I came to Shanghai this time? Is it to see the excitement?" "I don't have such happy thoughts. It was because I didn't know how you were living and how your children were doing that I made this great wish to come and see you. It was because I didn't practice cultivation in my previous life that I met such a man in this life. But you don't have to resent him. After raising the child well, in the end, are we afraid that we will not still be a good couple?" I only remember the first time he came to my house to be my new son-in-law. With his tall figure and delicate face, he opened his mouth to be affectionate. He just called me Mother. But now her voice became a little sad, and I couldn't help but interrupt her and said, "Mom, I've divorced him. Why are you still mentioning him? Even if they are divorced, husband and wife will always be husband and wife," she said categorically. "In the future, when Yuan grows up, he will call you Mom and him Dad. Will he be embarrassed to refuse?" I shook my head silently. The moonlight poured into the house like water. My mother drank 2 more sips of tea, and her face became even more serious. After a long time, she put down the vegetable manager and said to me, "Qing, tell me, you won't marry again?" I couldn't answer for the moment. I thought to myself, if there is an ideal person, why should I not marry? There is no good man in the world. She couldn't help saying sadly, "When they haven't married you, their words will be as sweet as honey. When you have married him, you are still not married. Are you just throwing it aside as a piece of rags? Besides, you have children, Mom. Men nowadays have new ideas." I felt that she had hurt my self-esteem, so I couldn't help correcting her. She sneered and said, "Other thoughts can be new, but this kind of thought will never be new. You will regret it when you get cheated for the second time. Besides, it is not good to have someone sympathize with you when you first marry. If you marry again, if you don't do it, people will only laugh at you." I was impatient and said angrily, "This way I will never get married again." She thought I was really awakened, so she said with great joy, "This is my good boy. Qing, I have one more thing to say to you. I bought a cemetery in Huhui Mountain the month before. The feng shui is very good, and the area is spacious. I want to go back and write a will, asking your brother to leave an open space when he builds our tomb in the future, and you will be my companion forever." I smiled and said, "Mom, by the time I die of old age and go to Huhui Mountain, maybe I will have been reincarnated elsewhere?" She replied seriously, "If I had agreed with you today, I would wait for you. Our mother and son will live a miserable life, and our souls will cry bitterly in the mountains." At this time, I thought of my late father who was abandoned in love, and how I had planned to marry my late father, but died at the age of 8 and was first married to the Lian family. So I asked, "Mother, you are buried on Hujiang Mountain. Are you dear? Are you buried with Lian's mother?" She thought for a moment and said, "I really hated your mother at first, but now I am old and have no energy. How can a woman not follow her husband in life and death? Are you considered his virtuous partner on the tombstone?" I asked. "Maybe it should be written as the second wife. I don't quite understand." She replied. "Then how should my tombstone be written?" I asked. She thought for a moment and said, "There is the tomb of Jiang's mother in Fenghua. When Yuan grows up, he will definitely fight for you. He may become a high official, and your tombstone can be written in the same way." But I shook my head and said nothing. I imagined that 30 years later, the green mountains would remain, the green waters would flow, but I would return to the earth. I didn't know if it was on Huhui Mountain, but there must be a place where I would be buried. In the future, I would write Tomb of Su Qing, the literary man, on my tombstone. Although my articles are not good, I did write them. I have written a lot, and I am still writing. I plan to make it my lifelong career. How can I not mark my own identity? In the future, someone may see it and say, "Oh, is this Su Qing's grave?" Maybe someone will say, "Who is Su Qing? Oh, she is a writer. What works did she write? Let me find them." Although I could no longer enjoy the royalties at that time, I was still happy that someone bought my book. I also remembered that I had seen Yuan Zikai's tomb in Nanjing not long ago. He was also buried with his parents, his wife, and 6 wives. If there were ghosts, they would be so lively in the underground. I only remember one poem of Yuan Zikai, which was about Liu Bei's marriage proposal, saying, "The sword light is like snow in the bridal chamber in autumn." And I believe that being a son-in-law in the world is sad. The candlelight shakes the red man half drunk, and he dreams of Jingju on the bed of love. I think this sentence is the best. There are many people in the world who are absent-minded and love their wives. They either dream of stocks and gold or want to be members of the national government. For such people, even if a woman lives with him and dies with him, what joy is there? Thinking of this, I was relieved and felt that it would be better not to marry. So I talked to my mother about being buried together on the Xiangjiang mountain in the future, and then went to bed with peace of mind. The next morning, my mother woke me up again and said, "Go to the Hong Temple to burn incense once." Of course I didn't object. The children were still asleep at that time. I woke up the servants, gave them instructions, and then secretly sent my mother to burn incense. There were many incense burners at the entrance of the Hong Temple. My mother picked out a bunch of the best incense sticks. I wanted to pay for her, but she refused. She said, "I'm over 50 years old. Unless something serious happens, I'm afraid I won't be able to come to Shanghai again. This is my respect for the Bodhisattva, and you can't pay for it on my behalf." I didn't force her, and walked into the temple. She respectfully lit the incense, then knelt on the mat for a quarter of an hour, mumbling prayers. I don't know what she was saying. I guess she must not know what God is sitting on it. She only worships the God in her heart. Overall, her life behavior is kind, loving, selfless, and altruistic. I think she is a God herself. If she can extend her love for her family and children to all people in the world. The sky is white. It is the dawn, giving infinite comfort to the fortunate human beings. I can't help but kneel down silently behind her. Where is my destination? The lakes and mountains are us where my body is buried, and my real soul will always rely on kindness and love.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.